All right. I want to go ahead and introduce your moderator for this event. Elisha Crane is a current master's student in epidemiology and also a graduate assistant in the Office of Public Health Practice and Engagement. Born in Kentucky, Elisha was raised in Texas and completed his undergraduate degree at Texas A&M University as a public health major. Here at the School of Public Health, his area of professional interest is identifying and addressing disparities at the population level through applied statistics. He is also a self-proclaimed amateur tree enthusiast. Elisha, I will allow you to step in and take over.
Sure. Thank you so much, Brianna. I just wanted to start by introducing all of our panelists today. I'm going to try to step out of the spotlight and let everybody else answer all the wonderful questions that we have prepared today. And then, just for all of our attendees, as you are listening in, feel free to write down any questions that you have, and we'll do our best to answer them all at the end. So let me start by introducing our panelists. Okay, so first off, we have Dr. Vigilant. He is a public health professional with over 35 years of experience in the field. He is originally from the Commonwealth of Dominica, where he spent 17 of those years working for the government in the field of public health and on projects with agencies such as the World Health Organization, Pan American Health Organization, and UNICEF to make improvements in the health and well-being of its residents. Dr. Vigilant obtained both his master and doctoral degrees here at UT School of Public Health in Houston. He is currently the Technical Operations Manager at Harris County Public Health in Houston. He is over the Mosquito and Vector Control Division. That division is responsible for overseeing environmental surveillance for vector-borne diseases transmitted by mosquitoes and ticks, such as West Nile virus, St. Louis encephalitis, Zika, and so on and so forth. Over the past 4 years, Dr. Vigilant has been working alongside Dr. Paige Wormuth as a mentor to students in the Division of Management, Policy, and Community Health. Next up, we have Sam Kreis. I hope that I'm pronouncing your last name right. Samantha is the Workforce Development Director for the Office of Practice and Learning at the Texas Department of State Health Services, DSHS. Previously, she was the Academic Affairs Coordinator for the Office of Practice and Learning. And prior to joining DSHS, she served as the Research Assistant for the Houston Train Study at the Michael and Susan Dell Center for Healthy Living, which some of our students have a relationship with. Samantha earned her Master's of Public Health from UT Health Science Center at Houston School of Public Health. She majored in health promotion and behavioral science with a concentration in physical activity. Before that, she graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Exercise Science from the University of Pittsburgh. In her free time, she teaches group exercise, hikes with her dog, and enjoys the Austin outdoors, which are oh so lovely. And then next up, we have Ryan Strittmacher. Ryan graduated from TCU in 2011 with a degree in interdisciplinary studies, after which he volunteered with AmeriCorps in Austin, Texas, working with underserved youth. After his time at AmeriCorps, he began his career in healthcare, where he worked for 7 years in a variety of operations and clinical roles. Then in 2018, Ryan graduated from UT Health Science Center with a dual degree in public health and an MS in biomedical informatics. Since 2019, Ryan has worked for ESRI as a Salesforce business analyst in their information tech division. ESRI is an industry leader in geographic information system software, which some of us may have had a little bit of experience with here at the School of Public Health. And then last but not least, I'm not sure if he has joined us yet, but I'll go ahead and introduce Dr. Shaw. Dr. Shaw was appointed Secretary of Health by Governor Jay Inslee and joined the Department of Health in December 2020. Prior to this role, Dr. Shaw served as Executive Director and Local Health Authority for Harris County Public Health, HCPH, the nationally accredited county public health agency for the nation's third largest county with serving 4.7 million people. Dr. Shaw originally earned his Bachelor's of the Arts in Philosophy from Vanderbilt University, his MD from the University of Toledo Health Science Center, and then here at UT Health, he completed an internal medicine residency, primary care / general medicine residency, and his MPH in management. He also completed an international health policy internship at the World Health Organization headquarters in Switzerland. And I think that he'll probably tell us a little bit more about that in his background. And then wrapping up here, Dr. Shaw currently holds numerous leadership positions with respected entities like the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, the CDC, Trust for America's Health, the Network for Public Health Law, and the Texas Medical Association. He previously served as president of NACCHO, which represents the nation's nearly 3,000 local health departments. Over his career, Dr. Shaw has been described as a clinician, an innovator, an educator, and a leader in public health. So today, I think we have a lot of wonderful panelists with a lot of wonderful experience in the field, broad background that I think represents a lot of the educational endeavors that a lot of us students participate in. And I am really looking forward to getting into hear more from them and less from me. So let us start with the questions. I'm going to open up the questions or the first question is an introductory question. So we want to learn a little bit more about the panelists, their experiences, and we will go one by one, starting with Dr. Vigilant, then Sam, then Ryan, and then Dr. Shaw. So first for you, Dr. Vigilant, our question is, how did you end up where you are now, and can you give us a brief timeline of your career?
I think you're muted, Max.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you.
Good afternoon to everyone. Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me to this panel and be able to share my thoughts and able to share some public health information to those of us who still seek in the field of public health and want to remain in there. So I basically would use three words. I would use perseverance, dedication, and commitment as what took me to where I am today. But I look at the journey from working in the Commonwealth of Dominica as a public health, environmental health officer, and move up the ranks and be able to contribute to the field of public health. I always committed to helping others. And when I look at the contribution of course, or the contribution of Snow, the contribution of Yersin, I try to path my whole life along a career along that path, basically to make a commitment and to stay to that and stay committed to public health to get. So I'm here for 30 something years. That means I have been, like I tell folks, maybe I'm able to be read and write, but I know public health because I can go along that line. So it took me along that path from working with WHO, PAHO, UNICEF, working with the people of Dominica, working with the Kalinago Indians of Dominica to bring actually public health concepts, public health ideas, public health, change their whole life and well-being, and improve the life and well-being of the residents, improving the life of the people in the community. I immigrated to the U.S. and came to Harris County Public Health, working in Harris County Mosquito and Vector Control, and also the environmental public health sector. And the whole process is still helping others and helping to improve the life and well-being of other individuals. That's my path.
That's a great path. Next up, Sam, I'm going to ask you the same question. How did you end up where you are now, and can you please give us a brief timeline of your career?
Hi, Elisha. I just want to compliment you for getting my last name correctly. No one ever does, so props to you. So I guess where I am now probably started back in college. I originally wanted to pursue a degree in pursue my doctorate of physical therapy. And so for anyone who's looked into that, you have to do a lot of shadowing. And so while I was shadowing, I was working at the hospital on the orthopedic unit with patients who just recently had hip and knee surgery. And while I was helping them and observing them, I kind of realized the common public health problem where we're treating the disease, not necessarily what caused it. And so a lot of the people that I was treating, they weren't getting knee or hip replacements because they were star athletes, but they had excess weight or just long-term and the long-term effects of that. And so that's when I started to explore public health. I wanted to originally stay in the physical activity realm, which is what brought me to UT Health Science Center. I was really intrigued by the Michael and Susan Dell Center for Healthy Living. And then while I was a graduate student, I worked on the train study with Dr. Cole and Dr. Duran, Dr. Gabriel. And then that transitioned into a full-time position, which I was really grateful for. But unfortunately, the funding was ending. And so I had to start looking for a job again. And I actually found my last position from the Facebook group, the student Facebook group. One of a former student from the year before had posted a position, and so I applied, and I was really excited for the opportunity to work with her and Courtney Desendorf, who I also knew from my time at UT Health. And then since then, I've been working with the same group and moving up and taking on more responsibility, and it's been really exciting.
Well, thank you for that. I actually also was going into physical therapy, so it's nice to see somebody else who made the pivot. Next up, Ryan, I'm going to ask you the same question. How did you end up where you are now, and can you please give us a brief timeline of your career?
Sure, yeah. Thank you for having me today. So I think much like a lot of people here is kind of had that attitude and was raised with the idea of giving back to your community and helping others. And so I think for me, it started sort of abstract and it was after undergrad where I volunteered with AmeriCorps, and that really solidified. I wanted to pursue a career of sort of giving back. And I thought public health was the way to do that. So then I pursued some postdoc studies at TCU, and then went on to do my MPH. Before that, though, I was getting my foot in the door, and I worked for an optometry clinic for a while, and then got some clinical shadowing experience as an ER scribe, and did that for a couple of years. And then I found myself working for that company's corporate office, and really found that I enjoyed some of the operation aspects and integrating business systems that support a lot of sort of the public health initiatives like GIS and grant funding and things like that sort of happen behind the scenes that we don't always think about. And so I went to UT Health, and from there got even more experience, did some GIS classes, some policy classes. I really did a smattering of different things, and I found that it's all paid off. And that's where I really discovered my interest in GIS, and then spent a time working for a public health consultant company named John Snow Inc. Or JSI out of Boston, and did some work for them, also with UMass Memorial, working on their EHR initiative. And so I think that really solidified my path towards working on the business system side of things, and sort of systems engineering behind some of the data systems used in public health. And then that brought me where I am today, working for Esri. Again, working behind the scenes, sort of providing system support to the people on the front lines that are making those the COVID-19 dashboards and things like that are more forward facing. So.
Well, thank you for that. That seems like a really interesting, non-traditional path, but I think that the work sounds really great. Okay, and last but not least, Dr. Shaw, I'd like to ask you the same question. How did you end up where you are now? And can you please give us a brief timeline of your career?
Yeah, hey, can you hear me? Got my Washington mask on, and I apologize for I'm a little far away from Texas right now in Washington. So first of all, greetings everybody. Thanks for having me, and I really just want to say how much I missed all of you in Houston. I'm still transitioning from Texas to Washington, and as Dr. Vigilant knows, Max, my good friend and colleague from a long time, that we fought many wars together in the trenches at Harris County. And I know that there's just a lot of fantastic work that he continues to do as part of our department there. So as you know, in December and probably in January, more to hit November and probably in January, hit the mark, I made the transition from the Director and Health Authority in Harris County to be the Secretary of Health under Governor Inslee at what I call the great state of Washington. And so I am right now in Seattle as we speak, and really just incredible honor to be joining the cabinet under Governor Inslee. I will say that my journey to public health, as you can imagine, just as you heard from people, is like you don't always plan it, and all of a sudden, the next thing you know, you're in it. And I was in medical school and reading something in a microbiology textbook that nobody really read because it wasn't going to be on the test about smallpox eradication. It was something like biology or microbiology in the world. And they were talking about the WHO ambitious plan to eradicate smallpox from the planet in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. And then in 1977, as you all know, the last case of smallpox in Africa, and 1978, it was declared eradicated from the planet. And, here I was thinking in Ohio, oh my gosh, here's a disease that was afflicting tens of millions of people, and it's gone. And that was so powerful for me as a person in training that I said, you know what? I want to go to the WHO. And all my classmates thought I was crazy. They had no way. And by the way, this is, I don't want to say this. I had no way. And by the way, I should. This is before email, before the internet. Okay. So I had to write letters. I had to make phone calls. I also had to talk about how I knew French. And the next thing you know, I was on a flight to Geneva, and I spent 2 months international public policy externship at WHO headquarters. And that just blew my mind about population health, global health and population health. And so when I then came and matched at University of Texas, UT Houston for Health Science Center for residency, it always stayed with me that I love taking care of patients and people and individuals, but I always felt like there was something bigger that I wanted to also have an impact on. And even as I finished my residency and fellowship and became an ER doc at the VA for actually 20 plus years, at some point I realized that I had my MPH from UT School of Public Health and that I did not aspire to be the ER director. I didn't want his job. And when you don't want your director's job, that's usually a good sign. That's not the field for you. And so guess what? I then moved into public health first in Galveston and then Harris County, and now in Washington. And so what I've really would say to all of you is that, regardless of how you get to whatever your career path is, just recognize that it's such an incredibly rich field, an open field that allows you to meander, but also to stay focused as best you can. So just allows you to meander, but also to stay focused as best you can. So and I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you for the nuggets of wisdom. I'm hoping that we'll get a lot of those today. So the next overall question, we'll do it in the same order that we just did. Which is, the question is going to be for Dr. Vigilant. Can you briefly tell us what your duties are in your current position?
Harris County Mosquito and Vector Control. And my duties are to basically supervise the surveillance section of the department, which includes mosquito surveillance, vector surveillance, avian surveillance, and the virology section. So in vector surveillance, we looking at ticks and kissing bugs and collecting and processing and identifying. We're looking at, in the avian section, we look at collecting birds, trapping birds, taking a blood sample, bringing it into the lab, testing for West Nile virus and triple E, St. Louis encephalitis also. In the mosquito surveillance, collecting mosquitoes, setting traps to collect mosquito specimen, bring them to the lab, sort them, identify them by species, by sex, by genus, group them and test them for West Nile virus, chikungunya, Zika, dengue, and St. Louis encephalitis. In a nutshell, we control the surveillance section is responsible for collecting all that data, taking it in, getting the test from virology for viruses. If we get a virus, we transfer that information to the treatment section, who will handle that protection for the residents of Harris County. So in a nutshell, that's what I supervise in Harris County, mosquito control.
Thank you for that. All right, next up, Sam, could you answer the same question? Can you briefly tell us what your duties are in your current position?
Sure. So there's kind of three parts to my position. I work with the preventive medicine residency, the internship program, and the continuing education program. All of them are within our office, and so I work with them sort of providing support and doing QI projects or process improvement projects, which is sort of the second part of my role, is looking at our office and finding ways that we can either maximize our efficiency or improve processes. So I do a lot of process and quality improvement projects, and then so sometimes it's me who's doing the work, and other times I'm just kind of providing support to our to my colleagues and providing guidance while they're doing it. And then the third part is actually where I know Elisha from our workforce development initiatives. And so some things, so sort of the goal is that we're trying to improve the public health workforce, both inside DSHS, but then also the pipeline. So, working with universities, and some of those initiatives we've been working on is becoming an academic health department with UT Health Houston. We're developing a Public Health 101 series, and so that's going to be for really anyone, but it's specifically geared towards individuals who work at a health department, whether it's DSHS or one of the local health departments, that don't have a master's in public health or a background in public health, but kind of to give them that, baseline understanding. I do outreach events like this, and then we're working on grants to kind of expand health equity at DSHS and at the regions. So that's the workforce development initiatives. It's right now kind of the smallest part of my responsibilities, but it's going to become the biggest. It's sort of a new initiative within our office in DSHS. And I also wanted to go back a little bit. I forgot to tell y'all, I actually found out about public health through a career panel. So that's why I love doing these, because I wouldn't have known about public health if I hadn't gone to the career panel at University of Pittsburgh. So for all the attendees here, I'm glad you came.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I think a lot of the attendees are gonna hear some things that might spark some career interest through all these. Next up, Ryan, can you briefly tell us what your duties are in your current position?
Yeah, I'm actually glad that Samantha mentioned process improvement. That's a big role in what I do. Also in every, I think, position I've had in some form or fashion, and so oftentimes my day or my week will look like I'm getting with various stakeholders throughout the company. We will have a initiative or a project, and we have an ask to improve a business system, and one of our first questions is always, well, is the business process ready? Are you guys ready for the change? And so identifying that change management as well, and really getting people to talk to each other. So my job can be very technical at times, but it's also very dependent on my soft skills and being able to connect with people and connect others with each other to have those conversations and to drive the vision. So I'll usually go out and gather business requirements. What do you guys need in your system? How is this going to help you do your job better? And then we'll go and build it. So I'll also be hands on keyboard, working with in the code a little bit, or we have something in our software we call clicks not code, where it can be configured through the UI, and we can then show that to the client internally and say, hey, does this meet your needs? So it's really the full spectrum of talking with people, helping them to improve their business processes, and then designing systems that help them to do their jobs better.
Oh, it sounds like you got a little bit of everything in there. All right, next up, Dr. Shaw, can you briefly tell us what your duties are in your current position? I know you said that you made a recent pivot.
Well, I just maybe add to what Ryan just said is that every day is a different day. And I think that's the challenge, is that there is no one day. From an ER doc mentality, I think it may be perfect because, it's every day is something different, but it can be challenging. And right now everything is COVID, 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 COVID vaccine, COVID vaccine, COVID vaccine, COVID, COVID, COVID. And so it's, those are the main things that are really driving a lot of the work that's going on. And I will tell you that at the same time, there is an increasing recognition that we as a public health community need to be really thinking very intentionally about what does life beyond or as we get, we're not there, through the end of the long tunnel of this pandemic, what does this mean for us as a society? What has COVID, how has it transitioned and transformed us as a community, and what does that mean for public health? And so every day is different, part of my health. And so every day is different challenges that I am still commuting at times from Houston to Washington and back and forth. And so I think there are some travel logistical challenges. Essentially, it not always works out this way, but if you could think of it as 1 week in Texas, 1 week in Washington, 1 week in Texas, 1 week in Washington. And that means that every week there is something different because there's virtual and then there's truly on the ground. So for example, right now I'm in Seattle and I'm doing this presentation or panel in Houston, but I'm going to shortly, in fact, I may have to cut off a couple of minutes early, but I will have to get in a car and go to Snohomish County, which is just north of Seattle, and to visit a mass vac site that's on the ground today. Yesterday, we were in with the governor and the second gentleman of the United States, the vice president's husband, in Yakima, which is a community in the eastern side of south and eastern side of Washington, across the mountains to get there. And there was a FEMA mass vac site that was set up, so we went to go visit. And so that was a very different day than today is. Tomorrow is going to be very different, where we're going to be bringing in healthcare associations to talk about what we can all do together to enact vaccine confidence. And every single day seems to be different than the day before, the day after.
Wow, well, that seems great. Actually, I think we have a lot of questions. I think some people expressed some curiosity on what is going to change after COVID, some of the systemic changes. I think that's a big buzzword on a lot of our minds. So we'll pivot to that later. So now we're going to go into some specific questions, specific for individual panelists. So first up, Dr. Shaw, our question here for you is, what skills are missing from current public health leaders at the state and local level?
Well, I think it's look, I'll encapsulate this in the values and the values that I believe very strongly here at the Department of Health in Washington, which are equity, innovation, engagement. That it starts with equity, it ends with equity. It's also about being creative, innovative, not just using technologies, but how do we actually think about different ways of solving problems, and then engaging communities and partners. And I don't know how well we as a field, not just state, local government, but we as a field are positioned in it, but we as a field are focused front and center, just to talk about it, but to actually be and to feel it, to execute on, implement it. And then finally, engagement. And this is, I think, key. So I'm on social media. I'm on USHAMD on Twitter, and so you can follow me and all those things. But I'll be honest, there aren't a lot of people in public health that are on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, or they use it for their personal, not their professional. And so there's skill sets that we don't really have, that we have not really gotten as good at in utilizing. And then the final thing is that, and I think the vaccine hesitancy is a perfect example of this, that we oftentimes hide behind public health speak and big scientific talk in our white coats, if you will, proverbially, and we forget that we're part of the community. And how do we actually engage community members so they understand what's going on? So I think we've got a lot of work to do in the soft skills of how do you engage.
Oh, thank you for that. And a kind of a follow-up question here is, how do your values inform your leadership style?
Sorry, it's having some technical issues there. Values, I believe very strongly that we need to cater, and we need to really make sure that we understand and recognize the value of community. And so my values are very much, I come at it from a public health standpoint, system standpoint, from a healthcare provider standpoint, from a family member standpoint. I've had, really have had challenges from a health standpoint, and from an individual standpoint, to say that we have to do to, one, make sure those values are what we put out there, and that we champion and model those values. And I also think that it's critical that, especially at a time when public health has been increasingly under assault, that we are willing to go hard back when somebody comes at us, and there's solidarity in the system. So if I'm the only person on social media saying, no, that's not right, and I'm getting bombarded with 50,000 people that are coming at me, and there's nobody in the public health community that's even responding, saying, no, he's actually giving you the right information, then that becomes a very lonely place. Now, there are people that have been there. Dr. Hotez is one example, right? Somebody who's been vilified by many people, and yet he keeps speaking truth to power, right? And that's what we have to do, is be willing to, one, to have solidarity amongst ourselves, and then be willing to be amongst ourselves. And number two is to be able to speak truth to power.
I didn't expect that answer, actually. I probably need to sign up for Twitter after this. Next up, Dr. Vigilant. You have more than 30 years of experience in the public health sector. Do you have any words of wisdom for anyone entering into public health right now?
Yes. I would tell the folks who are into the public health field or want to enter the public health field, do so, come along, but be dedicated. You have to be dedicated to the job. To continue the process in public health, you have to consider and understand that first tenet of public health is prevention. You're in the field, you're on the line for the preventative part of health, and leave the curative part to the doctors and whoever is responsible for that area, because that's their part. But if we prevent, then we know we can make sure we control. What have happened lately? You look at our situation with COVID and all our emerging infectious disease and our poverty diseases that are returning. It's because the watchdog of public health is so limited. We are few in numbers, and everybody has moved to a different area, to a different field. We produce public health personnel every day, individuals every day, but how long do they last in the field? So I tell the individual, come along. But when you come along with that dedication to commit to the field, to stay in the profession, and to make a meaningful contribution to the health and well-being of others, and to follow that path of wanting to be that individual to help that other person or their community to reach that next level. Not to look at the results that you'd want to acquire wealth or be that person to drive the Benz. No, we got to drive that old Mazda 323 and just continue plowing along the way. But along the way, the satisfaction is that you have helped an individual, a committee, a community, sorry, and the nation on the whole. So if you have that preventative attitude, that preventative method, that first thing that need to pack to your mind is that I am a preventer, another curative individual, and that is where public health lines. So I say, come along, come in there. It's a very beautiful field to be in. It's a lovely area. It has several aspects you can divert to, and it's not just the one line. So it takes that individual, a committed individual. You come in and you want to use public health for the next stepping stone, don't forget that public health is the first line of defense in the health and well-being and protection of individuals in the community. So I say, come along into the field of public health. We're looking for professionals every day.
Thank you for the encouragement. And the next question is, according to the APHA, only 17% of those educated in public health go on to work in government agencies. So the question is, why did you and why should we?
So I can apply the statistic in different ways. And if we look at several communities, so for instance, I want to take the Caribbean Basin for the first part of it. In the Caribbean Basin, most and almost every public health individual works for government. So that statistic would be different because that is what is available to us on the island, is to work for the government to improve the health and well-being of individuals. I apply the statistic in another environment, which is in, let's say, the US, according to APHA. This information has allowed me to see that individuals may come into public health for that benefit, for that knowledge, for that skill, and just to be, we call it, harpooned or grabbed in by the next higher entity in private sector that wants a public health personnel. So if you are committed and dedicated to public health, you look at getting into the field and sustaining a couple of years of misery in the field for the benefit of the people. But most folks are looking at the financial turn of what public health can provide for them. So they're snatched by Kellogg's, Brown and Roots, by Exxon, by big entities who wants to organize their own public health program that's in that little nutshell. But the community health aspect of it suffers because we don't have enough individuals. So we have the commitment of our instructors at UT, say at any of the public health universities that keep turning out public health professionals like Ford turn off cars. But at the end of the day, the better individuals, well, the individuals want to leave for the higher field because they think that public health doesn't compensate them sufficiently. So we suffer that rule, and that is why we are at the crossroads in terms of our public health aspect and our public health workings right now, where we are, again, I come back to the emerging infectious diseases knocking at our doors because our professionals are so few and far between. So that percentage results in also government, some areas of government not putting enough emphasis on the public health aspects of protection, and it links to more politics than public health. They're the same peas, but politics and public health. So individuals are more apt to drift from public health for other specific purposes than to take care of the public. This is statistics, like I said, it can be applied to various countries in different ways.
Thank you for that. You mentioned that perseverance is a key characteristic for public health servants. Whenever you're pushing for perseverance, how do you recognize and address your own burnout? And what do you do for self-care whenever you're in the field?
So as a dedicated professional, along the way, you don't want to stop. You believe that you should keep on going and keep on going. But along the way, your mind tells your body, I can't go anymore. Your body pushes, and then your mind said, I am limited. You start making errors, you start getting slower, you start looking at aspects differently and asking yourself, why should I do it? But then along the way, you see the next aspect that you would like to accomplish, and you go for it. But then at a certain point, your body tells you that you need a rest, you need a pullback, you need to take a day off or take 2 days off and rewind and come again. So what do? You find an avenue. So for like me, I'm going to withdraw and say, I'm going to go hunting. I'm going to do some duck hunting, hog hunting. I'm going to do some crabbing, collect crabs. It's free in Texas. I'm going to ride my bike, and I'm going to just maybe hang with the family. But you got to find something that rejuvenates you for the next progress. Before COVID, I would find that I would take a flight to the island, go to Dominica, have some fun, be back on the island, get into the rivers, get into the ocean, and come back, rejuvenated to start the process of Earth. But you have to recognize when you need to back off a bit and then start in order to start over. Because you keep on putting unleaded gas in the car all along the way, somewhere along the way, something's going to happen, you know? So you got to know, well, okay, the engine is not working properly, so let's stop, change the oil so we can move on. And you have to recognize when to do that. And that's what I do. I recognize the time that I need to take a back off because I'm feeling the burnout. I feel my mind is not really working the way it should be. And then I start over again.
That's some really practical advice. Thank you.
Okay.
The next one here for Sam. What do you think employers are looking for in new public health graduates? Hard skills like coding, a broad working background, a certain type of completed project, etc.
Thanks. Okay, so I will answer for hard skills, but I do really like to emphasize the importance of soft skills because in my opinion, and I know NACE has done some research, which is the National American Council, something about internships. I'll get the exact, but they've done some research on it, and so most employers have no issue teaching new employees or recent graduates that, you know, more typical hard skills like coding or statistics, project management, all that stuff. The thing that they don't really like teaching is sort of the soft skills or the essential employability skills, like being on time, answering your email and your phone, showing up to meetings when you're supposed to, all that stuff, those skills should not be underestimated. So I just really want to emphasize how important they are. But I will answer your question. From our perspective, from DSHS's perspective, we're always looking for people who have some skill and confidence working with statistical software and analyzing data. And that's only going to grow, especially with COVID. I think just anecdotally, a lot of the open positions come through our office because we share them with our partners like you guys. And we're always getting sort of people who, positions that are looking for people who are experienced with statistical software. And the nice thing about that is, you know, the state typically uses SPSS and SAS, but once you know, from what I understand, I actually am not super skilled in statistics, but from what I understand, once you know one of the softwares, it's pretty easy to learn the other ones. So if you don't necessarily have a ton of experience with SAS, you have great experience with Stata, that shouldn't deter you. GIS is also becoming more and more important in our work, and I do actually think we have some projects within our organization that we're going to be strengthening the skills of our current workforce. So if that's something you're interested in, you should definitely pursue that because it's a valuable skill. Project management, process improvement, QI, all that stuff is so necessary, but great skills, and those you don't necessarily get during your MPH, or at least I didn't. I mean, I definitely got pieces of those, but I don't think I got the, you know, the you know, full theory of it. So if you're interested in, if you're, you know, not a data person like me, project management, process improvement, QI are definitely really, really important skills. And then there's also sort of more the traditional skills that are part of running a business, regardless of whether it's a government agency or a nonprofit. So knowing how to work with a budget, accounting, providing feedback, managing a team, being a leader, all those stuff, all that type of stuff is really, really important in public health. And it's not necessarily, some of it you'll learn in the classroom, but then, you know, a lot of that other stuff you kind of have to do your own self journey to learn.
Thank you for that. I think that we're seeing kind of this theme in today that we need to strike a balance between hard and soft skills, which is a surprising answer to me. The next question that we have for you is, how do we continue to advance our careers once we enter a position? The theme behind that is, how do we turn jobs into careers?
That's a great question, and I'm really excited you asked me this one. I think sort of a scary word is networking. And I know it scared me when I had my MPH. It felt really false, and like I was trying to like use people. But really, what changed networking for me was realizing that it's just about making connections and making friends in a field that you're already passionate about. So I think for anyone who, you know, the networking is kind of a scary word to them, just think about it as like finding new colleagues, making new friends in public health. And I think that will play a huge part in developing your career. I mean, what helped me get my, you know, first position at the state was having a relationship with Amanda, who was a former classmate, and Courtney, who was the academic affairs coordinator. I think that was her title at UT Health. And that really helped. I mean, it didn't get me the job, but they were able to kind of recognize my name. So I think that's a big one. The other thing I think is really, really important is having a growth mindset. You finished with your degree and you've just started learning. You're going to learn so much in your first position. If this is your first position, you're going to learn so much. So just take it all in like a sponge. Don't feel like you're not, throughout your entire career, don't ever feel like you're done learning, because that's really going to stunt your growth as an employee or a manager or whatever your role is. Kind of going back to the networking piece, but talk to people about your career goals and what their career goals are. When I worked on Train, I worked with Dr. Greg Nell, who's now, I believe, a professor. And I'm so thankful that he was a mentor, because we always were talking about what we wanted to do and how to do it. And it really helped me shape kind of my vision for my future. And I still don't know where I'll be in 5 years. I hate that interview question. I never ask it because I hate getting it. But I think being open to opportunities, you know, I wanted to stick in physical activity, and there wasn't an opportunity at the time that I needed a job. And so I took the academic affairs coordinator position because I thought it would give me a lot of the skills that I needed, and I'd work with a team that seemed like would be a good fit for me, and I haven't regretted it since, you know. And that doesn't mean I won't go pivot and go back to a career of physical activity. But if I do, or when I do, I'll have all these skills because, you know, I went off the path a little bit. So just because something, you know, isn't in your exact pictured plan that you decided, you know, when you were 18, doesn't mean that you're going off your path. You're opening yourself up to more opportunities. The other thing, which I think is really important, is public health is such a broad field. And, you know, a lot of people, or at least me, come into it where I wanted to work with physical activity. I wanted to work with healthy living, nutrition, obesity prevention, all that stuff. And that's not my day job, but I volunteer, I teach group exercise on the side. I work at the Y part-time on the side, not anymore, I guess, because of the pandemic, but I was. And so all that stuff kind of fulfills that physical activity type dream that I have. And so just because your day job isn't, you know, in violence prevention or mental health, or whatever it is you envisioned, doesn't mean in your free time you can't pursue those interests. And then the last thing I'll say is the best way to advance your career is by surrounding yourself with people who support you. And I think that is really important, whether it's your family members, your supervisors, friends, colleagues. Be with people who you lift up and can lift you up, because that's really going to help you get where you want to go.
That is some really great advice. Thank you for that. And then for you, another question here we've gotten from the Q&A. I'll just group two of these questions together. For new graduates with no or minimal experience, would you suggest any certification like SAS or GIS or the Certified in Public Health exam to improve their profile?
That is a really great question. And I am sorry, but I'm not probably going to give you a great answer. Or I'll give you a great answer, but it's not going to be what you probably want to hear, which is a yes or a no. It's going to be a depends. I think if you really like working with SAS or really love software, then yes, you should 100% pursue a certificate in that. I don't think that you should spend time or money getting a certification that you don't hope to use in your career someday. I think there's sort of this like push for, get this credential, get that credential. I mean, I think they're important if you'll use them, but they're a lot of work and they're a lot of money. For example, I'm taking a project management class right now, and I originally wanted to get my PMP, and then as I'm taking the class, I'm learning these valuable skills, but I don't think I actually need the PMP to do my current job. So I'm not going to pursue that. Now, I do think if you are, that you're looking for a job and you need something to fill your time, taking courses are great, especially there's so many cheap options. ACC, if you're in Austin, is an excellent source for professional classes. They have a project management one. I think they have a social work one. They have a GIS one. They have more specific like health care related classes. So look to your community college. Udemy has some great classes. The other thing is like, don't be afraid to pursue some more like sort of fun type classes. So I have masterclass, and with my job, we're doing more grant writing and applying for grants. And so I'm going to take a master class for writing because a big part of grant writing is telling a story. So you don't necessarily have to go about it the most traditional way. I will say having, something like CEF or CHES isn't going to hurt you, or it shouldn't hurt you. But I will say if you put something on your resume, the person's going to expect you to be able to do the skill. And so make sure you're being honest about whatever it is, So for instance, like if I decided to get my PMP and I never worked on, $1 million project, I should not apply to a position or say I am, have the capabilities of working on $1 million project, if that makes sense. So just be careful. It's really easy to, want to collect all the acronyms. Just make sure before you invest your time and money that it's something that is going to help you get to your next level.
I think a lot of us will find that advice very helpful. Thank you. All right. Next up, Ryan, questions for you. How should we build our skills and qualifications towards a career in something like Salesforce?
Well, one way would be certifications, but I want to reinforce what Sam said, which is I don't, for example, have a single certification. I was done after grad school for a while, and I didn't want to go get any. But I haven't stopped learning, right? I'm either through my job or through open resources online. I think Salesforce has their own training portal that's entirely free. I think it's just trailhead.salesforce.com. You can go pursue educational materials without having to pay for or get a certificate. I work with a lot of really great and smart people that don't have a single certificate, don't have a grad degree, and it doesn't define, having that doesn't define your intelligence or lack thereof, or your capacity to do something. To kind of reinforce also what Sam said, I'm probably gonna say that a lot, is there's so many open resources out there. One I love is I'll do the LinkedIn Learning 30-day trial, and I'll go learn something new in an afternoon or a weekend. And so I found that immensely useful. And Esri, for example, if you want to learn more about GIS, they have a lot of open source training that you can go do. Most of the people that I work with directly, I can't speak for everyone at the company, they don't have like an additional GIS certification, right? They've learned on the job, they've learned on the fly, they've gone and read the help articles, right? You'll spend a lot of quality time with documentation. But it's all interdisciplinary. It all connects, right? It's the intersection of communication and technology that makes that'll make you good at any position. I feel that you want to go after.
Thank you for that. Next question, kind of the last of the individual questions. What was the biggest challenge you faced growing your career? How did you approach it? What would you have changed looking back, and what lessons did you learn?
Yeah, let's see. I graduated undergrad in 2010, 2011, and I think there was still a bit of an economic upswing at that time after 2008, and I honestly found it difficult and challenging to find a job, period, full stop. It didn't matter what the industry was. I knew I was interested in healthcare. I was interested in nonprofit work specifically. But I sort of had to balance, I think somebody else may have said this, the reality of what I wanted with the reality of what was available. And that did shape my career, but I found myself in a place that I really enjoy, and I really enjoy what I do now. Though it's not directly public health, it does relate, and I get to indirectly support people that again are on the front lines doing that work. But I think just tenacity and drive, being open to opportunities you may not find yourself deliberately seeking out at first thought, but again, networking always helps. I think a thing that really helps me was the first conference I ever went to, that I didn't even know what the School of Biomedical Informatics was. And I went to I believe, Texas Fresh Air Conference. I think it's hosted at a UT San Antonio. And I got to network with some professors at the School of Biomedical Informatics, and that really opened my eyes to a whole other field that I found myself growing passionate for. And I didn't know it existed the week before. And I think just having that openness, something else, a bit tangential, but at UT Health, I found one of the most valuable things I did was to approach professors directly and say, "Hey, I'm interested in X. There's not a class offered. Can we go work on this together?" So I did more than one directed study on a variety of topics, and those were excellent learning experiences. And I encourage people to go reach out, go invent the thing that you want to learn about, and somebody will likely want to work with you on that.
Oh, thank you for that advice. That's actually very, very helpful. Okay, these next questions, we're going to make a shift here towards the pertinent topic of the last year, COVID, and how it relates to our career and our field in general. Dr. Shaw, I know that you said that you might have to step out a little bit early. So let me go ahead and ask the questions that we wanted to direct towards you. And they're not, we'd like to hear you answer first, but if anybody else has anything to chime in or add, we would love to hear anybody's opinion on it. So the first question is, how are state and local health departments going to change post-COVID? Will there be modifications to things like department size or the direction of the work?
So thanks for that question. And bottom line is we don't know. There you go. We're done. How's that? You want more detail? Answer. You want more detail? Look, I mean, look. It's right now. It's frustrating. Let me be authentic. It is frustrating because we have had, and you remember in Texas and Houston, and how many emergencies have we had, and how quickly have people forgotten? And we're in the middle of a 100-year. We haven't seen this kind of a pandemic in 100 years, right? In recent memory, this has been the most devastating, impactful event, crisis of a lifetime. And yet, very quickly, we are going to forget. If you don't believe me, let me just put this out there very quickly and just look back. Right now, everybody's focused on vaccines. How many people right now are focused on testing? How many people are focused on contact tracing? Now in Epi we are, and everybody's, but what I'm trying to get to is ultimately we forget. We have a very short time frame of memory. And so I don't know if, I hope it is, and I've testified in Congress to this, right? I said this in the Senate. I hope that this is a transformational moment for public health, that we have true investment in public health, not just in name, but we truly put dollars and resources there. Because if we don't, what I'm really worried about is the public health workforce will no longer be a part of that workforce. We are going to lose, and we already have lost so many people that have left and exited and said, I could do something else. And it's a terrible, terrible thing to see for all of us who love public health and know the importance and the incredible importance of it. But the problem and the challenge is that we don't know if truly our policymakers are going to heed the moment, if the public is going to truly recognize the absolute critical importance of public health. And so let me just stop there and just say, that's why I don't know. I would hope that it is investing in the workforce, investing in technologies, investing in epidemiology and disease surveillance and communications and logistics, all the things that we had to do in the midst of COVID-19. But 6 months ago, we were all focused on testing, and now people don't even think testing is important, that we're out of the pandemic. So there's my answer.
That's a great answer, and actually I think it'll change the direction of the next two questions. I guess the more logical follow-up question would be, as budding public health professionals, how do we make strides to combat this aspect of maybe getting left behind as the public health changes in the coming years?
Well, look, a few years ago, or was it a couple of years ago, that there was some notion. I don't think it was very popular, but there was a benefactor that said, I'm going to cover the tuition costs for medical students. You remember that? It was like a 4-year buy of all medical students, their tuition was paid. And I said, well, that's great, but what about the public health students? Who's going to pay for the public health education, right? Who's going to do that? When you go across the street at MD Anderson and you see the terraces and you see valet parking, and then you come to school of public health and you're like trying to struggle to figure out how the cafeteria is going to operate. I mean, these are some very basic things that is a value proposition of public health and the lack thereof investment in public health. And so I think what I would say to students are twofold. One, be involved. Yell from the mountaintop that public health matters. Scream it, yell it, get on social media, say it. Don't be afraid to tell your friends and family, and tell people you don't even know, because that's your job, because your friends and family, you know what, they're going to believe you. I don't care about that. I'm talking, well, actually your grandmother may not anyway. They may still not understand why you did this and didn't go do engineering or something else, but that's another story. Your friends and family will believe. Go tell people, go engage people who do not believe in public health and scream from the mountaintop why you believe that it's important and why you went into this field. That's one. Number two is get those skill sets, attain those skill sets. Be engaged, like you just said about being on Twitter or social media. Be on those platforms. Understand the importance of how do you navigate that terrain. If you are not going to do that, you are just as much, not you, but all of us, you are just as much of the problem as I am. We've all got a role in this. And that final thing, which I would just say, is that you've got a crisis in front of you. Go learn it, not by reading about it, not by watching it on TV. Go volunteer at a vaccine clinic. Go see what it's like to do testing. Go figure out what contact, get into a health department. Go in the community, learn, see, do, engage. You've got to be better than the leaders that are on this call. No offense, actually, the three that are with me, they're fantastic. It's me. You got to do better than me. You want to be a leader for the next generation that is markedly more practice-based and not just about theory. Let theory be what is your foundation, but don't get stuck in the theory. Know the practice. That is the most critical element of this. Those are my words of wisdom.
Well, that is incredibly helpful, and I hope that everyone, all of the attendees here are feeling as motivated as I am to head in a certain direction. Now I'd like to open up some of these questions. First off, I think that I received a request really briefly from our host today that we'd like to take a screenshot very briefly before Dr. Shaw has to leave. Brianna, did I get that right?
So we're just gonna do a quick photo before Dr. Shaw has to leave. So it's a screen grab. So everyone smile and okay, 1, 2, wait. I think I got it. Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to the rest of these questions here. And again, I think that we'll have a little bit of time here at the end to ask some Q&A questions. I know that we've gotten a few, so please feel free to ask anything. The next question here is, and I think that it was one of the Q&A questions, what have you learned in response to COVID? And this is open for everybody. How has COVID changed things for you and your job, apart from maybe being remote? Things like day-to-day functions, the way that you communicate with your employees, things like that.
I'll jump in. I think that, remote, obviously a large part of it, but I think that, we use tools like Microsoft Teams, which is kind of like a chat video conferencing application, and of course email, but I think there's a lot more reliance and need more than ever to be able to articulate not well just in speaking, but in writing, and being able to convey your message and sort of your digital presence, if you will, which sometimes it's easy to say I'm not going to hop on camera today, or I'm only going to stick to a phone call, but being able to just say, hey, I'm gonna get on camera and I'm gonna communicate. And so I think that having that FaceTime is important, and it's something that I think we take for granted when we work in person. Being able to read other people's body language, and it does drive a lot of communication and tone of voice. I do find myself and others, we'll kind of follow up with each other a little bit after a meeting that was maybe a bit more tenuous, and say, hey, like, did that come across okay, or is the message there? And so really just going to lengths to make sure that we're still communicating well, and that we're not being overly casual sometimes. There's a time and a place for that, but you still have to have an air of formality under, depending on who your audience is. So I think that just being mindful, being sensitive to others' communication needs and your audience is more important.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think that a lot of people have experienced the difficulties in virtual communication. So if anybody else has any thoughts on that, please feel free.
I think also add Yeah, I can also add the fact that it does allow you to tap into resources that you normally would not have. So the individuals with knowledge and skills, and working with them on a daily basis, sometimes you don't understand what they're capable of doing. Having to what COVID has allowed us to individuals to express themselves more, being available as Ryan said on in the Zoom or Teams, WebEx, whatever the case may be. You have, although you have the distance, you have people that are capable of saying, "Hey, we can do this or we can do that." You can. It allowed us also to recognize that we can do a lot more with a lot less, and being able to stay. I say that because being able to stay where you are and not having to go to the store, not having to go to the grocery to the shopping mall or whatever, and you can stay and you can work and you can do more with a little bit less. But you have that opportunity available. You have the things at your fingertips that you can type in everything to anybody that you need. And most folks end up at this point listening more to what someone is saying from behind the keyboard and that screen compared to what they would have at an interaction, direct interaction, face to face. And it allows you to allow a lot of things to come out of individuals that normally would just be hidden and covered up.
All right, our last question here along this line, and again, feel free to chime in on the previous question as well if you'd like. But how do you anticipate COVID impacting your workplace moving forward?
So in my case, it already have. And we see several changes, and I guess Dr. Shah will mention about it too, because he was part of that process before he left for Washington. And what it have done is take away resources from our day-to-day activities and direct it to the recovery process or the management process in the COVID system. Then, like I said, doing more with less. So we still have to do the environmental surveys, do the mosquito collection, tick collection, biology, do all of that process, do the treatment and everything in the mosquito control sector with less people, and still try to commit to the residents of Harris County by doing more or doing enough to maintain what we are accustomed of doing. So I look at the future as actually reducing our workforce even more if people don't listen to the authorities and say, you wear your mask, you social distance, you see what you need to do, you avoid the whole contact and try to prevent the spread of the variants and different variants coming through. Then we'll find our resources are thinning out even more and impacting what amount of information, the amount of treatment of protection that is brought for the residents of the county. So that is along the way. If things don't go along the lines of what the authorities put in place, and the politicians still try to say there is nothing happening, so don't worry about it, then we're going to find our resources, our workforce going to be burnt out and going to thin out the process even more. So somewhere along the way, something is going to suffer just to cover this pandemic.
Yeah, I just like to reiterate what Dr. Vigilant said. I mean, we've had to get really creative. Our office is not necessarily considered, some parts of it are, but we are not considered an essential service. So we are not the priority. And so we had to get really creative in being successful in moving our initiatives forward without some of our, previously people who would be very involved in key stakeholders. I mean, we host the internship program, and when COVID hit, almost all of our internship preceptors dropped out, and we're not going to host any more interns. And that was, a really, really big thing for our office, but not really something that, there's this whole other crisis happening. And so we had to get really creative and, really flex our networking muscles and talking to people to get placements for these students, because their graduation, depended on it. And so we've had to get really creative, with less financial resources and, less stakeholder engagement. And so I think it's been good. I mean, now it's, in some ways, it's kind of a new normal. I think what I worry is that some things that we've gotten from COVID have been, silver linings, like working from home, more flexible schedules. Those are all good things for the future of our workforce, in my opinion. But I worry that there will be less emphasis on, employee engagement and working on a team, and kind of like what Ryan said, is seeing people face to face and talking with your colleagues. Because, and I mean, one thing I love about my job so much is the people who I work with. And so I think that's an underappreciated part of the workforce. And so I really hope that that's something that we don't lose coming out of COVID.
Well, thank you all for those great questions. Before Dr. Shaw leaves, and before we open up to the last few Q&A questions that trickle in, I'd like to ask our closing question to each of you. And maybe Dr. Shaw, you can begin with answering this one. It is, or the only one. It is, what is one piece of advice you wish you heard before you started in your leadership roles?
That's a loaded question. First of all, let me thank you for facilitating this. I want to thank Ryan for just your I've been going after you on almost every question, and you've given nuggets of wisdom that I've been trying to park away. And Samantha, thank you so much for for everything you've done and your comments as well. And absolutely, Max, thank you. You have been just a colleague and dear partner for so many years, more than a decade. I want to say 15 plus years of being together. So on the front line. So just great to connect with all of you. I want to end on a hopeful note and try to tie that into the answer to this question. So there is a lot that I wish people had told me before I jumped into the fray. Absolutely. I get it. Yeah, absolutely. But there's also some incredible value to creating the path. I'll be honest, there are probably a lot of things that I'm not sure the predecessors in those leadership positions that came before me could have actually told me. I mean, honestly, but what they should have, and they did tell me, was hang on for the journey. Don't think of it as just a destination. It's a journey. And that journey is going to do a lot of this. And just hang on, just like a roller coaster ride, right? You're going to have ups, you're going to have downs, you're going to have, left turns, right turns. You're going to go fast, you're going to go slow, you're going to stop, you're going to restart. Those kinds of, just think, it's a tunnel, right? The one that I remember from Cincinnati, Kings Island, was the Beast, right? And there was a big tunnel, and you went in, and it got all dark and everything. That's what you have to remember, is that there is so much that's going on, but there's always a light at the end of every tunnel. And just hold on for that light. And be hopeful for the future. There are so many community members that are relying on us. And if we do our job well, then their lives are going to be better. If we do our job unwell, then they are also going to be impacted, unfortunately, negatively. My parents taught me two things, and I've said this before, do good and do well. And that's what I've probably learned most about leadership, is that it's not the same thing. So for everybody that's watching, do good is absolutely critical. Everybody focuses on do well, right? Hit it out of the park, get straight A's, be the best of the best. But do good is about doing it for the right reason. And so if you take that nugget of information, hopefully that wisdom helps all of you as you consider your career paths. And again, I want to thank you and Ryan, Samantha, and Max for just some incredible dialogue. This has been great.
And thank you so much for that. Dr. Vigilant, what is one piece of advice you wish you heard before you started in leadership roles?
Yes. So as a leader, I would be building adults to adulthood. In that sense, that individual, I say that to say that individuals who you would have to you work with are supposed to be adults and experts in the field, but that you would be using your expertise along the way, all the knowledge and skills that you have acquired over the years to apply to different individuals to help build them to the level that they should be or you would like to see them at a certain point. That you'd be the guy, one of the people who would continue pushing that profession to the level with the commitment, the dedication, that perseverance, and instilling that into someone else. I didn't see that coming. I just knew I was going to be myself on that path to work, but then I can't work alone. So I didn't realize I had to take so many other people with me along that path. So I wish somebody had told me, so I would prepare the van, and so that I could pack everybody in there and start working. But all in all, it has actually really make me grow along the way with the folks that I have assisted during my career, and that I expect to assist going along. And that, working with Youth School of Public Health and working with several other folks, that I would continue to create that impact. And I'm hoping along the way that this will help anyone in the future, that I can help along the way, public health or academia.
That's great. Sam, what is one piece of advice you wish you heard before you started in leadership roles?
Well, so I'm still very new in my leadership role, so I don't think I even know what advice I needed. But one thing that I'm really trying to do is to listen first, and to learn how to talk to people so that they will listen to me and trust that, I have the best intentions. And I think, that might sound a little like, I don't know, cheesy or tin canny, but I really do think that's important. I mean, I've learned a lot in my relatively short career, and I think the thing that I'm always learning is how to listen and let other people tell you what you need instead of deciding for them or thinking that you know best. And I think, yeah, that's all I'll say.
That's great. Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Ryan, what is one piece of advice you wish you heard before you started in leadership roles?
Yeah, I much like Samantha, I'm also fairly new in my role. But I think everybody on this call is very evidence based in what we study, what we do, right? But I think that one of the most valuable things I've learned that I wish somebody had told me 15 years ago is that the facts are not enough. So even if you get that job or you get your foot in the door or you find you're doing what you love, we have this buzzword, I don't know how pervasive it is, called, socialization, which is you're going to have to socialize whatever facts you have, whatever thing you're trying to accomplish. And you're going to have to socialize that to different stakeholders, to your boss, your boss's boss, to your peers, to your colleagues. And you're going to have to get buy-in. It's not enough to just, be right. It's not enough to, I think Samantha made a great point, is you have to listen first, find what other people need. And then even after you do that, and even if you think you've found what they need and give that to them or deliver that project, you've got to sell them on it. Even if it is 100% right, which it usually isn't, you've got to really socialize that idea over and over and over again. And you have to be willing to transform those ideas. And so I think that just being able to listen, and actively, be open to recommendations, last minute modifications of whatever you're working on, and that inevitable, socialization of what you're working on, of those facts, right? We've seen that with COVID, where we have the facts, we know that vaccines work, we know that they're safe, but we're constantly at a global level having to socialize this idea to people that, hey, like, this is why you should go do this, or this is why you should get tested, or this is why you should wear a mask. It's that idea of socializing over and over and over again, and knowing your audience, knowing your sub audiences, and that'll happen at a micro level as well. You know, it may just be 5 or 10 people in a room. But I think that would be my advice that I wish I'd received earlier on in my career.
Well, thank you all so much for the incredible questions. I think that that concludes all of the time we had available. I know that there were some Q&A questions that we did not get to. Please feel free. I'm going to write my email address in here. If you could please feel free to email me. I will try to see maybe if we can reach out to the panelists or get a satisfactory answer for the questions that you had. But thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you to our wonderful panelists. I think that we all learned a lot. I think that we're all motivated and inspired to head in a certain direction. And Brianna, did you have any last words?
Yes, thank you all for joining us today. Just as a reminder, there are events happening that are hosted by the school throughout the remainder of the week, and we encourage you to attend those events. You can find them on the academic or the school's calendar on the website. Again, you are entered into a raffle, so just be on the lookout for that. We appreciate it. Max, Ryan, Sam, thank you all for your time. We are very grateful, and I know as both a student and a young professional, I gained a lot of wisdom here on this, so I'm sure our students found value as well. I don't think we have any other questions or anything else, so thank you all, and I'll be sure to send out a recording of this to those who registered following the event.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Thank you.